And with us now for his quick reaction and analysis, this is Luis Dumlao, the assistant professor at the School of Economics at the Ateneo de Manila University. Good to see you again, Luis. Welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so what do you make of the employment report?
Well, I'm pleasantly surprised. It's May, and May traditionally, seasonally speaking, is graduation time. And traditionally, usually, or seasonally, unemployment rate is high because it's the time where students graduate and become part of the labor force and thus become unemployed. And yet unemployment went down to 3.9%. Obviously, we haven't looked at the numbers. It went out less than 30 minutes, an hour ago. I would look at agriculture because in the past few months, it's boom or bust with agriculture. It's either the highest gainer in jobs or it's either the biggest loser in jobs. I would look at that. And then the past few months, I would, if it continues, I would look at the labor participation rate. That means people no longer participating in the labor force. And keep in mind, if you're not looking for a job, you cannot be unemployed, you cannot be employed. So it would be people just walking down the streets doing nothing and not participating in the labor force anymore and thus no longer unemployed.
But to your point, May was also election period, the midterm election. So presumably there could have been some folks employed and now without jobs because it was it's a one-off thing.
That's a possibility. Yeah, that's a spot. But the previous one was 4.1%. That's already more than full employment, and for that to even decrease to 3.9%, that's really surprising. And how farther do we push this even lower than 3.9%? When I saw 4.1% in April, it could not be any lower than that. It cannot be sustainable, and yet it went down to 3.9%.
So I guess from the point of view of the government, according to the Philippine Development Plan, they can tolerate unemployment levels of between 4.4 to 4.7%. So they've got that leeway.
Yes.
Between now, 3.9 and 4.4. But then when you look at the numbers, 2.1 million so without jobs, that's kind of a concern, isn't it?
Well, people move. Keep in mind, it's a 50 million, more than 50 million labor force, and people move jobs. So that's natural. And the 3.9%, that's better than industrial countries. 5% in the U.S., much about the same in Canada and Europe. So that 3.9%, that's lower than even industrialized countries. So it's surprising. So I'll just say the devil is in the details, and we have to look at that. So, but
okay, well,
it's
now that you mentioned
nice,
the devil in the details, the underemployment rate, that ticked down. So that was also a positive. It came down to 13.1%, as you can see there. But it had been trending higher, and it was a bit of a concern to the academics that I've spoken with, because since February, we've done double digits, and it did trend higher until May. For the academics and yourself, I would presume it's the underemployment that really captures a holistic view of the employment situation.
The underemployment tells us about the quality of jobs. It tells us about it's more indicative of the poverty issue. But that 13%, that double digit, has been there historically for so many years. It only went to single digit, I don't remember, last year, 1 month only. And then from that on, it's double digit as before. So that's the challenge. How do we bring it down? But
yeah, because the problem is underemployment means that a lot more people are looking for paid hours or maybe even higher paying jobs. As you said, they could be employed, but probably underemployed, meaning they probably need another job to be able to spend on things that they need and want.
The colloquial term for that is muck jobs. That means you're working but you're not making enough, or you're working long enough hours, for example, the vendors, but they're not making enough to sustain their standard of living, or the minimum standard of living. And that's why it's more indicative the standard of living of poverty that's going on in the country.
And also in terms of labor productivity, because in the ASEAN, we're subpar. Labor productivity in Q1 showed a little bit of a weak performance there, and it would really be the engine of growth in an economy that's looking for an improvement in gross national income per capita. So what's going on? How come we're not able to solve this productivity gap?
It's been a long, it's kind of a puzzle if we already know the solution. I know people talk about, the motherhood statement being more productive, working harder, being more efficient. But even the term productivity, it's in academics, it's called total factor, productivity, something like that, or in other words, it's referred to as the solo residual. What cannot be explained by capital or labor must be productivity. So it's everything we cannot explain, basically. That's the
But
definition.
from the government side, that requires maybe pushing forward with upskilling, reskilling, because this is the only way that we could become more productive.
Yes, it's always the solution. And
are
better
we
said than
doing a
done.
good job of it, or we need to do more?
Obviously not enough, right? So, but I guess, but that is easier said than done once again.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Luis
Thank you.
Dumlao
Yeah.
of Ateneo de Manila University. Appreciate the insights there.